Legalizing marijuana, driver's licenses, 2020 Dems, the drone. We got a lot of topics to cover today with Dr. Bob.
Next on AM 1480 WLEA, the Newsmaker Show. Here's Brian O'Neill.
He's distinguished. He's here. He's Dr. Robert A. Heineman,
sounds
Professor
like
Political Science Emeritus, all that stuff.
Sounds like a Hannity introduction there with all the things they want people not to switch stations. We don't have to worry about that, Brian. People are, once they tune in, they stay attached to our station.
All right, let's start out quickly on the primary. State Senate primary next week between Allegheny County legislator Kurt Crandall and Chautauqua County Executive George Borrello. That's Tuesday, June 25th. What are the voting hours?
Noon till 9, and we certainly want folks to get out there and vote. It's a primary, so typically you don't get a tremendous turnout in a primary, but in this case, I think it's the sort of thing where your votes will count and make quite a difference and send a message to some people who pretty clearly need a message sent to them. So I really urge the folks to get out and vote Tuesday.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on the drone. It's a developing thing that'll be changed by 9 o'clock. I'm sure the latest on that will outdate me anyway. Probably not you, but did you have any thoughts on Iran shooting down that drone?
Well, I think, first of all, I guess we have no question that Iran did it. They shot down. But I think it's very clear, and we made that point again and again here, Trump does not want a war with Iran. In no way, shape, or form does he want us to get into some kind of military confrontation with Iran. Not that he's concerned that we can't kick Iran around the block. We certainly can. But the cost, getting sucked into that kind of, what President Trump wants to do is get out of the Middle East. And obviously widening conflict there by getting involved with Iran is not something he wants to do. So in terms of sanctions and all that sort of thing, obviously the president's approach, I think, across the board pretty much is to levy the economic sanctions as heavily as he can. And the fact of the matter is the United States being far and away the most powerful economic engine in the world, when we start making economic sanctions come into play, I think it's serious. It hurts other countries, and I think Trump would much prefer to follow that route. But again, we don't know what's happening there in Iran. There'll be, of course, a lot of analysis or pseudo-analysis, and you do get the feeling that maybe there's some real hardliners in Iran who really go out of their way to cause incidents any chance they get. And you get the idea as well that in the Trump administration, some of these guys are not in the same page that Trump is on this. So it's pretty mildly a pretty complex situation, and that little drone falling down toward the earth there could stimulate all kinds of nuances.
Critics of Netanyahu and Trump's friendship with Netanyahu have been predicting that Trump would be this big anti-Iranian hawk, but it didn't really appear to be that way on Thursday.
Yeah. No, I think Trump, again, thinks Iran has to be given notice that they can only go so far in some of these situations, but he clearly, I think, doesn't want to get deeply involved there. But the thing is, if Iran makes travel in the Persian Gulf really dangerous, then you're going to have a lot of other countries very unhappy too. So they have to be kind of careful how far they go.
I want to kind of, as Kevin Orn used to say, hopscotch around, moving into a state issue.
Yes.
Governor Cuomo came out and said legalizing marijuana failed because they got down to too few hours to work it out in the legislative session.
I see. So he's not really against legalized marijuana at this point, or is he?
I think he's for it. He made a statement saying that the Democrats in the legislature who were unable to get this taken care of should be primaried out of office.
Oh, is that right?
That's what he said.
Wow, that's pretty harsh. You're
not a big marijuana guy, Doc.
Oh, absolutely not. I think it's a horrible idea. I think it's going to lead to tragedies again and again and again. I just one of my real disappointments is, of course, John Boehner, former Speaker of the House, is running around as an advocate for the pro-legalized marijuana groups. And the people I talk to about legalized marijuana basically talk to you about making money. The states will make money off the taxes, the tax revenue that they can levy. And I'm not certain there's that much money to be made. Again, some of these other states that have legalized marijuana, I was seeing an analysis, I think, of the state of Washington the other day, and the state tax revenue isn't anywhere near what they projected. Again, we've gone over this time and again, but the whole idea of making it available legally, of course, again, there'd be state regulations and maybe state outlets, and I don't know how they would do this. And I guess the counties can, in fact, opt out of it if they want to. But it's going to drift down into the high schools. And, again, this whole idea that it's not a gateway drug for harder drugs is just, that's just totally fallacious. It is for some people, and that's enough to make for some very tragic situations.
Now, you speak, I think a lot of the reason you speak this way, this is just a guess, but that you used to be the Alfred Town Justice there.
I was the village justice,
Village
sir.
Justice, and you used to see a lot of cases involving marijuana?
I saw any number of cases of young kids who it's pretty sad. And these are kids that are under 18. The
marijuana opponents say that that's very bad for the younger teens. Developmentally, anyway, that was one of the arguments that came up.
Again, I'd have to go back and run through, but there were some pretty sad cases, yes.
Congressman Patrick Kennedy, the former Congressman Patrick Kennedy, Rhode Island jumped into the argument, urging the New York State Legislature to vote against legalizing marijuana.
Oh, good.
Yeah, he said it would. It's just going to make money for the big marijuana industry, but will cause a lot of problems medically. And he said they claim it's going to help the minority communities, and that's one of Governor Cuomo's claims. But Congressman Patrick Kennedy said that's not so.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of a weird claim.
Moving on to driver's licenses for illegals.
Oh, yeah. I guess there's quite a number of states that already allow that. Am I correct on that, Brian?
I don't know the number on that. I thought it was around a dozen, though.
That's what I thought, too, yes.
But I can tell you that I've seen the numbers on the EmpireReportNewYork.com page that there's over 200,000 illegals that are going to get driver's licenses because of this.
Well, they may not. Some county clerks, I think, have stood up and said that if they come in and they're undocumented, they'll turn them into the authorities. So I don't know how you get around that.
Do you think, I got thinking about that. I heard that on the Rush Limbaugh show that upstate New York was fighting this. Do you think Cuomo will send in troopers or do something forceful to these county clerks who aren't going along with what he wants?
Well, I don't know how far his power goes in that respect. But he can't allow the county clerks to refuse, I think. And I think his claim is that there's some constitutional basis for him to remove them if they aren't enforcing the law.
That was my next question. Can he get them unseated somehow?
Yeah. Yeah, we'd have to look into that a little closer. But there are some county clerks that have already stood up and said that they're not going to issue them. On the other hand, I guess if you're an illegal alien, you go in and the clerk won't issue it, I guess you can go to the next county. There's no reason you can't get it somewhere else.
Really, you can live in one county and get your license someplace else?
Why can't you?
I don't know. Say it's never come up as an issue.
As long as you live in New York State, I don't know why. I don't think you can go to Pennsylvania and do that right now, though.
Hey, this will be interesting to see how Governor Andrew Cuomo, how this plays out with him being rejected, because Spitzer was quite embarrassed back in 2006, I believe it was, when people like Judith Hunter, these Steuben County clerks, said, no, we're not going along with that. I think they did that in Allegheny County, too. Moving on to the topic of reparations.
Yes.
The descendants of slaves in America. The claim coming from people like New Jersey U.S. Senator Cory Booker and California Congresswoman Kamala Harris is that they need to step up and pay reparations because of slavery.
I think a lot of this goes back. First of all, it's a crass political move on the part of some of these elected officials to try to activate the African American vote. And frankly, I don't think African Americans are going to buy into this to any great extent at all. I think it's just really foolish in that sense. But the one area where you do get reparations, of course, was to the Japanese and Japanese Americans who were held in concentration camps during World War II, in a move which was basically racially motivated. As we know, the Nisi division in Europe, which was all Japanese Americans, I don't know about their officers, was the most decorated division, I think, in the European theater. So these guys are over there fighting for the United States, and their families were being put in camps in Utah, Nevada, Arizona, Montana, and lands were taken from them. And again, I taught out in Cheney, Washington, Eastern Washington, in the early 60s, and some of these people were still around, and they lost their farms, they lost their homes, because obviously they couldn't keep the taxes up when they were being held. It was a pretty sad thing, and the Congress eventually then agreed, and I knew one of the ladies who was involved in this, agreed to provide reparations to Japanese Americans who were held in that situation. I think the reparations were $20,000 apiece. Some of the Japanese Americans and Japanese said you can take your $20,000 and go fly a kite with it, or they just refused to take it. But some did, I guess. Well, some did. There's no question. But there you have the victims are right here, and the people who did it are right here. So we're just saying, that was a bad thing we did, and this is one way of trying to make up for it. Pretty poor way all the way around, but in terms of how can you make up for it. But nonetheless, that was a clear example of where reparations, I guess, made some sense. But this other approach clearly is way outside the kilt of any comparison to what happened to the Japanese Americans.
We're going to take a break. We'll be back with Dr. Robert A. Heineman. Stay with us.
With the stock market at all-time highs, cash in your profits now and invest in an asset that can potentially pay for up to 20 or more years. That's the sound of a producing oil well and the sound of a smart investment. If you're an SEC-defined accredited investor, you can take advantage of Encore Energy's projects. Call now to learn how you can potentially achieve 20 or more years of income and deduct 100% of every dollar invested against all forms of income. Call 1-800-803-8511. Invest in your future and buy oil. Encore is drilling in an area that is potentially one of the most prolific horizontal oil plays in the entire country. Oil prices are projected to rise, so you need to own a piece of an oil field. Encore Energy is the most active oil and gas operator in its core area of operations. Call now and learn how to deduct 100% of your investment and create 20 or more years of potential monthly income. Call 1-800-803-8511. You'll be calling directly to the home office of Encore Energy. That's 1-800-803-8511. Oil investments involve a high degree of risk and actual results may vary.
Back with Dr. Robert Heineman, Alfred University professor emeritus of political science. Dr. Heineman,
Yes.
Joe Biden, the
Yes.
former vice president, former Delaware senator, he's still in the lead.
Sure.
The talk shows have done a lot of coverage on how ABC did what they're calling a hit piece on Joe Biden, bringing up a lot of dirt on the Joe Biden son situation, that Joe Biden's son had some, ties to the Ukraine, et cetera, et cetera. The talk shows are saying that it looks like the media wants to get rid of, the liberal media wants to get rid of Joe Biden because they don't think he can win.
Well, there may be other reasons they want to get rid of him, too. One being that he isn't nearly as bad a nutcase as some of the other liberals.
He doesn't go as far.
That would be another way of putting it, yes. And so he's kind of drab, I guess, in that sense. So there may be other reasons they're not too favorable to him. Again, being a front runner like that, if you can hold that front runner position for 18 months or more, then he'll be home free. But I think there's plenty of room yet for Mr. Biden to make all kinds of strange statements. He's already had to take back some of his positions, and of course he voted. I think he voted for the Hyde Amendment way back when he was in the Senate.
And the Dems are mad at that.
Prohibits the use of federal funds for aiding abortions. And now he's changed his mind on that, and I think you're going to find... I guess he mentioned the other day that he was able to work with Senators Eastland and Stennis, two of the biggest racists in the Senate at the time, and that bothers people as well. He's going to have more and more bumps in the road here. I don't think there's any question about that.
Real Clear Politics shows Biden at 31 points, Senator Bernie Sanders at 15, Senator Elizabeth Warren at 11, and then it's all downhill from there with Mayor Pete and the others.
Yeah, I'm surprised that Bernie's that far behind. But those are just general nationwide polls, I guess. And what you really have to look at is how this breaks down state by state by state. And I would guess, I don't know. We'll have to see how Iowa turns out. But you would think Biden would do pretty well in New Hampshire and some of those early states. We'll just have to see how that plays. But I frankly, Brian, what is he, 77, 78 years old? Or?
They say Biden's 77 now.
Yeah. I mean, that's a heck of a strain, running a campaign, a tough campaign, and then going on to be president. Boy, that's asking a lot of, you got to be pretty healthy fellow. And
to quote Kevin Dorn, he used to say that the big difference between Joe Biden and a lot of other modern Democrats was that Joe Biden is actually a patriot. That's the way Kevin Dorn used to put it. And I think that you're kind of on the same page today in that you're saying that Biden is not as extreme as some of the other candidates.
Yeah, no, there's no question that Biden, on a number of occasions, has risen above partisan politics to do what he thought was basically right for the country. And I have no qualms about the guy's interest in the interests of the United States. There's no question about that. That, frankly, makes you a fairly attractive candidate in many ways.
You know where I think he shows his that he's a manly guy? He never, ever, and I'm sure the young people don't even know about this, he never makes reference to, or his bios or the commercials never makes reference to, that early 1970s plane crash that claimed the life of, a wife and a young child of his?
Yes, I'm not all that up on Joe's background at this point, but he has had some real tragedies.
Yeah, he has,
and
he doesn't ever use that stuff in a milking kind of way.
Yeah, I guess.
Which puts him ahead of a lot of other political types.
Yeah, no, there's no question this whole identity politics sort of thing and victimization approach toward politics. Joe stands aside from that. But you could take the other 28 or 9 or how many there are and kind of break them up into categories. This sort of identity politics or this sort of victimization claim or this sort of discrimination, suffering sort of thing. I mean, it would be kind of interesting to do that. See how they're playing this or that to get enough votes, basically, to stay in the debates and maybe win a few delegates here or there. Yeah.
Dr. Bob, final thoughts. The Minnesota Twins.
Oh yeah, we got to be watching those, Brian. They're a team to watch. They're way ahead in the Central Division American League, and they're on the pace to break the home run record, which was set by the Yankees last year. But right now the Twins are looking at hitting way over 300 home runs for the team, and I think they have. I think the article I was reading said there's only one other team that's had 9 players hit 15 home runs or more in a year, and I think the Twins have 11 players who are on the route to hitting 15 or more home runs. And the point is, they're not particularly well paid. These are fairly average paid players. So somebody had some sense in the organization to pick some talent. I don't know if this is Billy Bean ball yet or not from the Oakland Raiders approach, or not Oakland A's approach, but it really is kind of fascinating.
Dr. Bob, thank you so much for joining us.
It'll be a weekend of baseball, Brian.
That's been a whole baseball hour. The Dodgers were here earlier.
Oh, were they? Well, let's get people out to vote Tuesday. That's the big thing right now.
Thanks, Doc.
You got it.